Happy Monday, everybody. Sophia Jurksztowicz and Kasey Hudson with you for another episode of the Hockey Hub. No hockey to play really over the weekend, but we've got the Stanley Cup Final coming up. We're going to take a look at that a little later in the show, but we have so much other hockey news in between, Kasey, involving specifically the Bruins. We have some Bruins alumni stuff to get to. We have a couple guests on our show, Jim McBride first, and then Frank Simonetti of the Bruins Alumni to talk about some events, very important events in the Bruins community. I'm sure as you've gotten integrated, you're realizing how quickly and how important just these events in the community is to the people of Boston. And we have some question marks around the Bruins coaching decision, which is why we have our first guest on, Jim McBride. So why don't we just bring him on right away, Case, and get things going, because we kind of have some, I wouldn't say breaking news, but Elliotte Friedman, who we said we love as a source, has kind of given us some news on his podcast, 32 Thoughts. Jim, thanks for being on the show. We're going to get your thoughts on the Bruins coaching situations, all things hockey. Thanks for joining us again.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, why don't we get right into it? Elliotte Friedman reporting that, first of all, actually last week I said there was unofficial breaking news. It ended up, not being confirmed by the Boston Bruins, but there were heavy rumors that Marco Sturm was going to be the new head coach of the Boston Bruins. That has not been confirmed by the Bees, and now we're hearing that they're still in the interview process, and the coaching candidates, according to Elliotte Friedman, are down to 2, and we have several names that were floating out there. Sturm, Jay Leach is reported among one of them, Mitch Love, and Jay Woodcroft as well, and maybe even Misha Donskov. So why don't we start with what you're hearing and what your thoughts are on where the Bruins are in the coaching search?
Yeah, I think last week there was 3 different reports that had 3 different guys ready to sign on the bottom line with the Bruins, but they all turned out to be not confirmed. But I'm hearing there is down to 2, and I'm pretty solid that Marco Sturm is one of them. I believe that Misha Donskov is still in the picture and that he's the second candidate. That's kind of a gut feeling, knowing his strong ties with Don Sweeney as the GM of Team Canada, and Misha served as an assistant for the Four Nations, and wouldn't be surprised if he's back on the Olympic staff next year as well. So I think he kind of fits that mold that Sweeney had been talking about, where a guy with NHL experience but doesn't necessarily have to be head coaching experience. They had to wait for Misha because the Stars, had a pretty lengthy run in the Western Conference, and they just got knocked off by the Oilers on Thursday. So my gut feeling is that he probably spoke to Don on Friday or Saturday, and I have a feeling that he's still in the mix. So if I was a betting man, he would be my second guy as the final 2 candidates with Marco Sturm.
Oh, if you were a betting guy, well, we're all on the edge of our seats because last week it was like, okay, Marco Sturm is very much that guy, and now it's down to 2 candidates. There's still 4 to 5 names floating around. I know that you mentioned it before, but for anyone kind of still catching up, or maybe that kind of blew off all the news for the head coaching stuff and is like rejoining it now since it's getting closer, make the case. Why Donskov over probably potentially Marco Sturm?
Yeah, I think he has a strong analytical side, and he's held a variety of positions in NFL front offices. A scout, a video coordinator, assistant coach, and I think he can relate to the players one-on-one. I remember a lot of the Dallas Stars players saying that he's such a good instructor one-on-one outside of like group meetings, and his ability to break down opponents with scouting reports is invaluable to the rest of the coaching staff. And I think he kind of fits what the Bruins need. He's a younger guy, brings energy. He's going to be able to integrate younger players into this lineup. And as we all know, the Bruins are getting a little younger. They're going to be younger this year, and you're going to need that kind of good cop, bad cop situation, and I think Misha Donskov can be the good cop.
With that being said, again, this is a heavy rumor, but not confirmed by the Boston Bruins. But with this coaching candidates, we're not hearing that Joe Sacco is in the running any longer as the head coach. So, first, your thoughts on that, and second of all, do you picture or can you imagine, is the way I want to say, can you imagine a world where he stays on the Bruins staff once again as an assistant coach, and why or why not if that's the case?
Yeah, tough situation for Joe. I think he came in and was named interim after the rough start. Did a really good job in trying to keep that locker room together. Has a lot of respect in the locker room and in the organization as a whole. So tough spot for him. A lot of injuries came down in later on in the season, and he did his best to hold that job together and hold that team together. Just, the talent was lacking towards the end. So tough spot for Joe. I think he could come back as an assistant depending on who they name as the head coach. I know at the end of the season press conference when we talked to Joe, he was asked about that very situation. Would he be open to coming back in a former role as an assistant coach? And he kind of said, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And I think the fact that he didn't dismiss it out of hand would lead me to believe that he would be open to certain situations of coming back and maybe even a front office position. But I think his love is being on the ice with the guys and instructing. So, I see an avenue where he could be back behind the bench.
I would completely agree. I had this debate among, with friends. Obviously, I'm invested as someone who works with the team, but also just outside perspective. I think some of my friends were saying that would be crazy. Like, you wouldn't go from head to being assistant. There's pride on the line. Like, why would you do that? But I think with Joe, like you said, how he addressed the answer in his press conference, and I don't know if you noticed him get emotional, but he seemed very emotional when he talked about what an honor it was for his family to be the head coach of a team that, they've spent so many years here, where he's from, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not sure exactly of the ages of his kids, but I believe they're just entering university or college, excuse me. I believe that there's so much that goes behind the decisions that people make that I think we as people make players and coaches kind of just like numbers and pieces, like transactional. But it's like, do you want to move your family? Do you have roots here? And I think he seems like a very humble man that isn't, and I'll let him say that, how he actually feels about it. I don't want to speak for him, but it seems like his pride, I guess, that people are saying could get in the way, wouldn't if he's making a decision for his family or what's comfortable, and he likes the Bruins organization. That's my 2 cents on it. I can completely see him coming back and as assistant, and I know a lot of people who think someone would never do that, maybe aren't considering the other factors of, friends and family and roots and all that. And anyway, just kind of echoing your sentiments there. And that would have to be a decision he makes with John Sweeney, but I do think it's on the table.
Well,
I don't think he's an ego-driven guy. I think he's as you pointed out, very emotional during that press conference because I think he really loves this organization that he grew up rooting for, and I don't think ego is something that drives him. I think winning is, and if he thought he could help this team win and this organization win, I think he would be certainly open to coming back in a familiar role.
Yeah, when I saw Brick ask him, I think it was the end of the last game, is when you really saw him kind of get choked up on those emotions. But to Sophia's point, say that Jay Leach is the guy that maybe gets the tab, because that's another name that's just getting, a lot of value and addressing around it. It's somebody that he's worked alongside of. There's partnership there, there's relationship there, there's connection there. Is there a switch that can go off and just be like, we might be switching roles a little bit here, but I can support you in this role to move this team forward?
That might be the one candidate that it could get a little awkward at, right? Because, they gave Joe the interim position over Jay, and Jay was kind of brought in at the beginning of last year after having a run in the Bruins organization. So that one might be a little more awkward than, say, if a new guy comes in that hasn't, been in the organization for a while. But I still think, ego aside, they could probably work it out. But that one might be a little more awkward than the others.
If I kind of jumped the gun when I asked about Joe, and I actually, in my mind, did have a follow-up about Misha, so I'm sorry to bring it back here, but if you don't mind circling back quick, you mentioned just his strength in scouting and just in analytics. How does that serve a head coach when you do have, staff to be able to help you with that? And perhaps specifically in this retool that the Bruins are in the middle of, so we don't know how many new faces we're going to see in the official offseason. And, like the Bruins have been criticized, for their draft choices or John Sweeney specifically. So how do those kind of assets help a head coach? And does a modern NHL head coach need to have that, or is that just a bonus?
Yeah, it's definitely a bonus, but I think his scouting background would probably help in the draft process. I'm not sure how much, input a coach has when it comes to, the draft and scouting, but certainly you can make a case for the players that you think will fit your system best. And I know that he comes from a responsible system, a system that preaches 200-foot game, and that's always been kind of a core philosophy of the Bruins as well. So if you have a strong scouting background and a strong analytical background where you can break down film and show players exactly what to do in certain situations. Now, it's a lot different than like an NFL where the whistle blows and they line up and it's a new play. I mean, the NHL is very fluid, so to be able to teach situations in such a fluid in such a fluid game is not easy. And I think Donskov is a guy that has been lauded for that in the past, that he has the ability to break down tape and make points with players. So yeah, I think that you need that strong background in scouting to have success when you're coming up with reports, especially when you only see teams a few times a year, twice a year. You need a guy that knows the league inside and out.
I love that too, because considering the fact that you don't want the NHL to ever become the all-star roster wannabe, like we've seen the NBA turn into, which means you've got to be able to find those unique skill sets that can help out and contribute to a roster, those guys that'll have instant chemistry, and not always the biggest names, especially during a retool. Kind of expanding to some of the other names that keep floating to the top. We've talked a lot about Marco Sturm. We all are fans of Donskov, but some of the other names floating around, you got Woodcroft as well as Mitch Love. Do any of these head coaches kind of fit the bill in terms of where you see this organization potentially going within this retool? We know Woodcroft has the ability to level up the power play, and then we know Mitch Love has that unique asset to be able to talk to young players and work with a blended roster that has veterans and young players as well.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the Bruins had problems on the power play last year, so you could point to Woodcroft and say, yeah, this is a guy that can come in and do that. And Mitch Love is a guy that is young and is not that far removed from a playing career, so I think he can relate to those guys. So in those aspects, certainly. He kind of fits, what Don Sweeney was looking for. But I think overall, the more of the package of like the Donskov and the Sturm, those guys seem to fit the roles a little better. But if a guy's going to get his first chance or a second chance at life like Woodcroft would be, those are certainly two candidates that would kind of fit the bill. And I think both of those guys are probably in the running in Pittsburgh as well, which is the only other job left.
Pete DeBoer is also, I don't know if he's rumored with the Bruins, but that's a name that's been floating around. And it's funny, in one way I understand if you lose 3 Western Conference finals in a row, I get it. That's not a great look. But on the other hand, I'm more on this camp that I'm just about to say. You made it to 3 Western Conference finals in a row. And it just drives me crazy when people are like, how could this happen? I think not making the playoffs for 3 or 4 years in a row, I get that. But making it to the final, there's only one team that wins out of now 32 teams. It drives me crazy when fans are calling for the head of someone that, gives you pretty much 1 round short of a Stanley Cup final run. Like, the money's there, the seats, the tickets, the jerseys, whatever, the TV deal, that's all there. You're getting all that done, save for 1 round. You didn't make it. I think it's an accomplishment. Where do you feel on the, oh man, they lost 3 in a row versus they made it to 3 in a row?
Yeah, I agree completely. I don't think you should be punished for getting there. I mean, when he's lost the Western Conference Finals 3 years in a row, and back-to-back years to a team that had Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl on it. Like that's right. There's no shame in that. And he also had a ton of success with Vegas, getting them to the Western Conference Finals. He hasn't gotten over the hump, but he's a very good NHL coach. I mean, he's undefeated in Game 7s. That's remarkable stat. So I think the Stars would kind of be crazy to let him go. I would try to keep that guy in place because he's proven that he can get you a lot of the building blocks and get you to certain spots. Now, I don't know that another coach could come in and take over the Stars and get them over the hump, because you've already got an established system there with Pete, and I think your best bet to get to the Stanley Cup final is to stick with him. So yeah, I think it would be kind of a crazy and maybe irrational move to get rid of him. or let him walk out the door.
Yeah, well, the emotions go pretty erratic, especially when it comes to the playoffs. But I agree. I think it's a little too quick to say that he should exit. But a lot of people are kind of like inflating these rumors because of the whole discord with pulling Ottinger so early. And then according to Elliot Friedman on his podcast, he mentioned the fact that he kind of has a short fuse when it comes to goaltenders and their performance. So I would automatically say probably not a fit here, seeing as how we're waiting for Jeremy Swayman to get back into Swayman form. Could we agree on that? It'd be a little too quick to pivot him to the Boston conversation, right?
Yeah, and I think with all the research that Don's probably done over the last, month plus, to have a guy, jump in at the last minute and be the coach, that would surprise me, because that would be kind of a quick decision where I think, Don's more methodical. So if they were to pivot and go to a guy like Pete, that would take a few more days, and I think they really want to have someone in place before the combine really gets kicking later this week.
I want to pivot to some other rumors, Jim. David Piñata of the Fourth Period reported that the Edmonton Oilers, who are, of course, in the final, reportedly were interested in making a blockbuster trade or acquiring about having Jeremy Swayman after he signed his big NHL contract. One, did you hear anything that confirms that? Two, obviously it didn't happen. Don't know if that's still in the mix. They seem to be doing pretty well, obviously. But what are your thoughts on that? I personally don't see Don having gone through what he went through all summer just to, unless you're getting Connor McDavid in return, which I don't think the Edmonton Oilers would give up, but just to make that deal. Did you hear anything about this, and what are your thoughts on that rumor?
Yeah, I heard the rumors. I didn't know. I was never able to confirm them, but I thought it was kind of a stretch. I know that it was a protracted summer, as we all know, and Jeremy himself will admit that he didn't have the greatest of seasons. But and you can see where there'd be validity to it, because the Oilers have had goaltending problems for a while, and Skinner is in the middle of a pretty good run right now, but he's had his struggles at times. He's been inconsistent. So I could see where the interest was there, but I can't believe that Don would go into the season after trading, Linus, and then, going through those negotiations with Jeremy, start the year with Brendan Bussey as the goaltender for the Bruins, on a team that they thought had playoff aspirations. So there might have been phone calls made, but unless Sweeney got bowled over, like you say, like McDavid or Draisaitl or someone like that, I don't think Edmonton had the assets to make that deal work from the Bruins side.
Yeah,
agreed.
Well, I'd love to see Swayman stick around and kind of up the ante next year. There's still faith there. You have a gut instinct about Donskov, but we got to get your take and your gut instinct on this Stanley Cup final. You got the rematch. Are you rooting for the Panthers because of Marshy, or where do you lean on this one?
Yeah, I think most Bruins fans were rooting for the Panthers until that trade stipulation got met, which it has. And now the Bruins are getting a first-round pick. Now I think some of the Bruins might turn their attention to Trent Frederick, who's with the Oilers. So it's interesting. Marchand had to beat Brandon Carlo against the Maple Leafs. He went against Taylor Hall and Dmitry Orlov in Carolina. Now he has to face Trent Frederick. So it's like a reunion tour for Brad Marchand. But I think it's going to be a very interesting series. I think I see those clips of the handshake line from last year's final when, a lot of the players were saying, hey, we'll see you next year. And, that's kind of hyperbole at the time. But I think a lot of us did think that these were the two teams that were going to be battling out again. And I would be stunned if it doesn't go 6-7 games, similar to last year when it went 7.
I would love it to go 6-7 games, just because the other two series were a little more lopsided than I ever imagined, to be honest with you. And obviously we want that hockey. Really quick on Marshy again, if you don't mind. This is more of like, imagine being in his shoes, which none of us can really do. But I think there are still Bruins fans that wonder, is he going to do this little run, get a taste, and then re-sign with the Bruins if he gets, his offer met with Don Sweeney? Obviously, he wanted more than the team was willing to offer. But what would be a more likely scenario? Winning, if for that to happen, winning the cup, having it done, and then being like, okay, I'm going to go back home, so to speak, or I feel like if he comes so close and loses, he might be inclined to sign with a team that is going to make it that far again, whether that be the Panthers. There are other teams rumored that maybe he gets this taste but comes so close but not close enough, and it's like, okay, I think I'm going to go with the team that will give me that best chance. What are your thoughts on what best case scenario would be for Brad Marchand to possibly re-sign with the Bruins again? Or is that done? I'll throw that out there as well. Is that also off the table completely in your mind?
No, I think both sides have left open the possibility that a reunion could take place. I think the best case scenario for that to happen would be for the Panthers to repeat, because then, Brad can put that Stanley Cup ring on his shelf and say, I did what I wanted to do. Now let's go and try to have a reunion tour with the Panthers. If they lose, then there is that thing like, hey, let's run it back and try to get the cup back again. And the Panthers are obviously closer to Stanley Cup medal than the Bruins are at this point. But I think if he wins the cup, then he's open to going somewhere else. If he doesn't win the cup, then it's like, yeah, I want another chance at trying to win it with the Panthers. So I think for Bruins fans that want to have Marchand back, they probably should be rooting for him to take home his second Stanley Cup.
Yeah, that's a tough one for me as a Brad Marchand fan. I definitely want it for him. And as a Canadian, it's been a while since a Canadian team has hoisted the cup, and it would be good for the city of Edmonton. I'm torn, but I think my heart is with Brad Marchand, just for him and his family. And I'd love to see him back in a Bruins uniform. So if that's going to help, I'm all for it.
Well, from a media perspective, I loved having Brad around because he was always accessible to us and always honest with his opinions, and he made for great copy. So anytime you can have Brad Marchand in the locker room, I'll take it.
It's hard to pick one because since I'm so new to the area, but I'm not gonna lie, I think I leaned towards Oilers in 7, so I gotta stick with it only because I always had a Western team coming out on top this year. Not to take away from the Panthers, not take away from Marchand, but I thought it was time for the West to come out on top as things flip and flop around, and plus Connor McDavid, I'm ready for him to get his championship. I think that we'll see some different generational talents start getting extra spotlights if that takes place, right?
Yeah, and if for Bruins fans that really want to reach out, Connor's an unrestricted free agent in 2 years. Maybe he wins the cup and decides he wants to come east to the bigger markets, and Boston is definitely a bigger market. So we'll see.
Don't float that out there yet, Jim. That's gonna go crazy. We don't have the bandwidth for that. No, but we will see. I mean, obviously the Oilers will do anything they can to keep him, but you never know. He might want to try some new things out. First things first, he's going for the cup, and can't wait to see what game one when it happens. What kind of tone and pace is set. But we're going to let you go. Jim, thank you so much for spending the beginning of your morning with us. And again, Jim McBride, guys, you can see his stuff on the Boston Globe. Excellent writer, covering the Bruins as a beat writer, and he'll have all the insight for us in the off season. Jim, thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your morning.
Thanks. Appreciate you having me.
All right, guys, we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to the Hockey Hub. We've got a lot of guests on our show. We just heard from Jim McBride of the Boston Globe, and we're switching gears a little bit into the Bruins alumni and our special guest, Frank Simonetti, big part of that Bruins alum. Frank, thank you so much for joining us to talk about the wonderful season you've had and some upcoming events that fans should be taking note of, some of them coming really quickly. Thanks so much for giving us your time this morning.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being with you this morning.
Fans, I was telling Kasey's from the Tampa area, and just like myself from Toronto, when I first joined the Boston organization and the city of Boston, I knew what I knew, but I didn't really know what I know now about how tight and how loyal and how intertwined Boston sports are to the community, not just as fans, but in terms of helping the community and helping its members. The Bruins organization, the alumni organization, such a big part of that. And not just when something happens, but forever, so to speak. Just, not just to be in the spotlight, but once that story or that moment has passed, they continue to help the families and the people that would benefit from that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the season that you guys have had, a 33-game season, and you guys have helped raise over $1 million for New England charitable organizations. How proud of you are you of that, and what was the season like?
Well, thank you. The Bruins Alumni have been around for 56 years now, reaching out and helping the community, giving back. It was founded by Eddie Sanford back in 1968. John Busick ran it for years. Bob Sweeney ran it. Rick Middleton ran it. And every year we've built a bigger following and reached further out into the community. And this year we had, as you mentioned, 33 games in all states but Vermont. We're still trying to grab a game in Vermont, but we, for the second year in a row, have helped raise over $1 million for local charities. And some of these charities, like the Mass Down Syndrome Congress, have been with us for 21 years now. And together we've helped them raise over $2 million. And many of these groups rely on the funds that these games generate for them to keep their operations going. We're some of the biggest parts of their funding for their organization. So we become very close friends with a lot of these players and the organizers, and we look forward to getting back together with them each season to create new memories.
Love that. Sophia's totally right. The first things that I heard getting into Boston was about the Boston community. And then luckily it wasn't for the alumni, unfortunately, but I got to be a part of a sled event, USA Hockey sled event, and just seeing it at a small rink, seeing Boston Bruin alumni come and be a part of it and how much it means to them. Can you just speak to the growth that you guys have seen season by season? I mean, $1 million this year is tremendous. And the fact that you're spreading out throughout New England, hopefully you do get to Vermont by next season.
Well, we're fortunate in Boston. It has a storied sports community. All the sports have been at the top of their game at one time or another, and the Bruins have been on an incredible run for the last 15 years. But we are also fortunate that many of the players, the NHL players that played here, retire here, whether they grew up here or not. So we have a great base to draw from of alumni players. And we have a very high percentage of players who did grow up locally, who went to BC, BU. I went to Norwich University in Vermont. I grew up 10 miles from the Garden. So being part of the Bruins community has been in my DNA since we started watching the Bruins on Channel 38 with rabbit ears back when I was a kid. And because of the strong bonds that we have, and hockey players in general really like to give back. I mean, the fans supported us for so many years, and it's the least we can do than to reach out and help them grow. And one of the things that we've done in the last couple of years is expand our organization to add a video component. We record each game. We have a play-by-play announcer that's been with us for over 20 years, in John Horrigan, that calls the games in the arenas. We have play-by-play, we have sponsor interviews, we have promoter interviews, we have organizational interviews, and we create this video package for them that gets released about 6 to 8 weeks after the game. And tied in with that is an enhanced social media component to our organization, where now we're helping these organizations promote their games. We're helping them sell their tickets. We're helping them raise awareness leading up to their games and after their games with YouTube clips that highlight some of the best parts of the games they just played. And it gives them a couple of things. It gives them the opportunity to relive their experience, but it also gives them the opportunity to reach back out into their communities to raise awareness and raise additional funds from that game, all during the year up until their following year. So hats off to the organization we have, Karen Winofsky, who's our alumni coordinator, Mark Willandon video, and all of our players. And I will say we've had 57 different Bruins alumni suit up over those 33 games, including 14 members of the 2011 Stanley Cup team that played with us back in December 7th. We had 11 different NHL alumni participate with us, 4 American Hockey League pros, and Alex Carpenter, Bobby Carpenter's daughter, who plays in the Professional Women's Hockey League, suited up with us in one game. So we're very inclusive from that standpoint. We want as many NHL and Bruins alumni to suit up, and that brings added attention to the games when there's somebody new making their debut, like PJ Stock made his debut this year. People loved him when he played. Couldn't wait to see him when he came out to dress with us.
Oh man, I was just about to pivot to a question, which I think I'll get there, but a little note on Peach. He's been a guest on our show. I've talked about him a lot. I used to co-host a show with him in Toronto, Frank, and he is just a ball of, I don't know what, energy, fun, laughs, smiles, a little immaturity in there, but all in the best possible way. I call him my little brother, even though he's older than me, but such a fun time to be around.
PJ's not shy. We'll just leave it at that. You know?
I think he's participating in your Bruins Foundation Beef It Heroes Cup, June 6th to 8th. Is that true? Can you tell us a little bit more about that event?
Yeah, it's this Friday. It actually starts on the 5th, Thursday night. They start their first game, and it's the Boston Bruins Foundation working together with the Healing Heroes Foundation to put on this event that supports first responders, law enforcement, and military health and wellness. It's presented by WellPoint this year, and it's an astounding event. Last year, 2 years ago, raised almost $450,000. Last year was canceled because of a compressor issue, but it's held at the New England Sports Center. It's played over 18 rinks. There's 188 games that'll be played this coming weekend with 13 divisions, almost 2,000 players all coming together to raise awareness for the health and wellness of our first responders. And the Bruins alumni will be part of their opening ceremonies. So 10 alumni will face off against the high individual fundraisers. So there are 104 teams, the most they've ever had. So it's a record there. And each player and each team is incented to raise money. And that money, if they hit a certain point, can be donated back to the charities of their choice. So there's, like for instance, the Worcester Fire Department has raised over $64,000 this year through this game, and that money will come back to them once the event closes down. So you've got that going on, and so our 10 players suiting up against their high fundraisers will be Andrew Raycroft, Kenny Hodge, Mark Mowers, Bob Sweeney, Mike Motto, Bruce Crowder, Dave Shaw, Tuukka Rask, Bruce Shoebottom, and PJ Stock. Now, PJ, Andrew Raycroft, and Mike Motto will be there the whole weekend. They'll be integrating into different teams, and they've done this for many years. And all three of them are great with people, great in public, and this is open to the public. And they have food trucks, they have Winnebagos, they tailgate all weekend long. A couple years ago, I was training for the Pan Mass Challenge, and I rode by on a beautiful Saturday morning about 9 o'clock. The grills were going, the music was playing, possibly alcoholic beverages were flowing. I couldn't confirm that from my vantage point, but I'm assuming they were. And they start playing games at 6:30 in the morning over 8 rinks, and they finish up at 11 o'clock at night for 2.5 days straight. It's an unbelievable undertaking. Johnny Whiteside from the Bruins Foundation is one of the key organizers, and they anticipate raising more than $500,000 this year. Hats off to them. This is their seventh annual event. Everybody with an event this size, everybody needs to be pulling in the same direction, and they have a great group supporting this event.
That sounds so exciting, not to mention the amount of brilliant names that you mentioned. I have to ask before we cut to a quick break, does it still get competitive though? Because some of the guys that you've mentioned, when I've heard them talk amongst themselves, any fun things that they've done with each other, or even when they're at their kids' like Little League events, it sounds like they're still very competitive.
They are very competitive, these guys in particular. And one person that we all know, Ray Bork, he was competitive for 23 years on the ice, Hall of Famer, competitive every practice. Now, he's not in this lineup, but every alumni game we play, and he plays 2 or 3 a year, he refuses to lose. Even if we're playing little kids, because some of our alumni games, in between our two halves, we'll have the mites come out and play. And he gets out there, we put our high-profile guys out there, and they have a good time. But Ray kind of winds it up, and this one time in particular, he comes across the red line and blisters a slap shot on this little 7-year-old goaltender, right? And we're all going, and he put it up in the top corner. I mean, no room to spare. And we're going, holy bleep, we would never have tried that, let alone, we could have hurt somebody. And we're like, yeah, way to go, Ray. He comes back to the bench, white. He goes, I tried to miss the net. He was so mortified at himself, but his body wouldn't let himself not score a goal. And he went up and apologized to the parents. He said, I'm sorry. And they just loved it. They said, no, this was great. The kid didn't even blink. He didn't see it, didn't know what happened. Just went zipping over his shoulder, and the crowd went crazy. So, yeah, these guys, so in events like this, there are going to be some teams that are playing at a fairly high level. There's A, B, and C and D leagues. So there's all different types of players, and that's the way it should be. In our alumni games, we will scale up or down our efforts depending on who we're playing. And some of our games get very competitive. There's no doubt about it. We age out. We don't age out. We average about 54 years old our team. And a lot of the teams we play are in their early 30s, and some with some high-level hockey talent. So we have to sometimes pick it up quite a bit and put the pressure on and do everything, every trick we know to try to win or at least tie, because we don't like to lose either. And we like to say we're undefeated in league play, which means last 3 years we haven't lost a game, and in our regular alumni games we have been bested by Philadelphia down in Philadelphia and Toronto last year up in Toronto. But those games are fun, and there's three things. We want to help an organization raise money. We want to have fun, for everybody to have fun, and no one wants to get hurt. So those are our three major criterias, and so far so good.
Excellent Ray Bork story. I will be sure next time I see him to remind him of that shot on that 7-year-old. No, I'm kidding. I won't do that to him. I'm sure he's cringing about that, but great story. Paints a picture of, the fun, the competitiveness, and what you can expect from attending a Bruins alumni event. Frank, we have more questions for you if you're okay with that. We have to pay some bills, send it to break. We'll be back in a couple minutes as we want to highlight some other upcoming events with the Bruin alumni. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to the Hockey Hub. Sophia and Kasey and Frank Simonetti here with you. We convinced them to stay with us for another segment as we went to break, because there's so many great events and great stories that the Bruins alumni can tell us, and events. So, before we get to stories, I really want to pump what you guys have going on. Why don't you talk about the July 4th Face-Off for Heroes and what's happening there?
Yeah, so over the years, the Bruins alumni have become embedded in the Warrior for Life Fund, which is, in its simplest terms, a therapeutic hockey mental health and wellness program that helps out the Naval Special Warfare community, more commonly known as the Navy SEAL community. The Bruins Foundation, Bruins alumni, and Boston Bruins have been big supporters of that organization and have helped it grow. I'm also part of that organization. I've been on the board for about 4 years now, and I'm taking a position as program manager for the Face Off of Heroes event, which is, as you just mentioned, July 4th in Bozeman, Montana. And what these Face Off of Heroes events is an opportunity for us to bring Naval Special Warfare operators and their families out, either to Boston, which we did in last December, Bozeman, which we're doing July 4th, and in San Diego, we're doing August 16th, to give them an experience they wouldn't normally get, playing with and against NHL alumni players. The game we play up in Boston is all Naval Special Warfare against the Boston Bruins alumni, of which last year we brought back the 2011 Stanley Cup team, most of them anyway. In July, we have 10 NHL alumni and one current NHL player, Sam Lafferty from the Buffalo Sabres, who is joining us. And we'll have a round robin tournament where there'll be a draft the night before. The NHL players get drafted onto three teams, which will also include some Army Special Forces players this year, in a round robin tournament. There'll be the draft the night before the game. There's a rodeo right next to the rink. We're all going to go over and watch the rodeo on Saturday night, on July 4th night. And then on the 5th, which is a Saturday, Kevin Miller, who just built a home in Pony, Montana, is hosting everybody at his home for a barbecue the next day. So it's a 3-day event with a lot of bonding, a lot of experiences for the special operators and their families. The Face Off of Heroes is presented by the NHL. They have come alongside the Warrior for Life Fund because the organization does such a great job of integrating the NHL alumni into most of the key events that they do. And we can't be happier for the support we're getting from the NHL. So that event we're looking forward to. A lot of work goes into it. It's like herding cats, getting everybody arranged and in coordinated hotels, flights, all the things that go along with it. But it is worth it to see the smiles on the faces of these special operators and their families, and they'll have a lifelong experience after these events are done.
I think that's amazing, and definitely want details on how we can support from Boston while you guys are in Montana. Montana's gorgeous. Grew up a military brat, so my family's actually been really close with the Wounded Warrior events and foundations and everything that we can do for that. I'm the girl that still cries when flyovers happen, but how can we get involved while you guys are in Montana holding that event from Boston or anywhere else?
Well, we're going to have a video crew out there so we can send back some clips if you want to run some things in one of your subsequent shows. If people want to support the Warrior for Life Fund, they can go to warriorforlifefund.org, and they can either become a sponsor or donate outright to the organization to help make this event and all the other events and the support that Warrior for Life Fund provides to these operators in addition to these games. And I'll just do a quick little side note here. The Human Performance Center that was built last year by the Warrior for Life Fund provides cognitive health and wellness for families, for operators, for spouses. So it's more than just hockey now. So if people want to learn more about what's happening in that community and how they can help, please log on to warriorforlifefund.org.
Thank you, Frank, for that information of how people could help. We have about 2 minutes left with you. If you're okay to talk about one more event that's not coming up this summer, but all the way on December 7th, but at the TD Garden, the Shoresy Fall Classic. People who are hockey fans on and off the ice have probably seen clips, if not diehard fans, of the show Shoresy. Always good for a good laugh. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what we can expect?
Yeah, for those who don't know, Shoresy is like Slapshot, the TV show. It's really funny. It's wonderful. We played our first game with them last year at BU, November 16th. 6,500 tickets sold out in less than 2 weeks. Tickets will go on sale this Friday for our game at TD Garden. It's a rematch, and they're playing 5 NHL teams in 5 NHL facilities this year. So they are just blowing up. And I'll tell you about last year's event. It's in Boston. It's at BU. 99% of the people there were there to see the Sudbury Blueberry Bulldogs. When we were introduced, we got the equivalent of a golf clap. When the Shorzy team was introduced, it's like Jesus and Bobby Orr had just walked through the door. The place went absolutely nuts. And I tell you what, we had the most fun with these guys, and they're very good hockey players. They have the Nolan brothers in Jordan, who won 2 Stanley Cups with the LA Kings. His brother played for the Carolina Hurricanes. Terry played for the Canadians. In Shorzy, Jared Keeso they're all very good hockey players. And I don't know if they let us win or we won, but it was a 9-8 game. It was close. I know we were trying as hard as we could possibly try to win the game, and we are looking forward to running it back on December 7th. And I've reached out to some of our big name players who I won't name now. They are very interested in playing if their schedule allows. So you can all guess who some of those players might be. We're hoping that their schedules allow them to join us on December 7th, because we're going to blow the roof off of TD Garden.
That is so cool. I honestly, just thinking about Jared Keeso, and I know he's like the brainchild and helps write all these funny shows. Like, just imagine being a kid, wanted to play in the NHL, and then you end up, being an actor, creating the show, and then now you're actually playing in an NHL rink where you're getting fans going crazy for you. Just that whole storyline is so cool.
They're living the dream. There's no doubt about it, and they've earned it. I mean, he works hard on all aspects of the Shorzy brand and Letterkenny brand. And they are the nicest people. They're hockey players, and I don't have to tell you how nice hockey players are. These guys are hockey players, so we'd expect nothing less, and we experienced that firsthand when we played them last year. I'm looking forward to playing them again this year.
So many great events to look forward to. Thank you for spending time with us on the show, and obviously throughout the summer. Maybe we'd love to have you back on to just recap how things went and how things, are looking towards the Bruins season. Frank, thanks again for your time. We do have to send it again to a break, but we'll have you on again. Good luck with the ones that are coming up.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back after this to wrap up the show with Kasey.
Welcome back into the Hockey Hub. Kasey and Sophia, we've had 2 guests and amazing conversations trying to figure out what's going on with this head coaching sitch, but hopefully we'll narrow that down this week so we can pivot to the other important things, what this roster will look like, and then Frank with the alumni information. Hopefully I'll be able to tag along with you eventually, Sophia, and see some of these alumni events. You mentioned bowling. I loved bowling and anything else to be a part of, but you and I got to chat about a few other things this weekend. It's Paul Maurice. And I have to say, while you and I are still getting to know each other, I promise I'm really good at my crow moments. I'm really good at admitting when I'm wrong about something. And right now, I have to say, I wasn't really on point with some of Paul Maurice's behavior, especially when it comes to this handshake line. So I'm having a crow day. How did you feel about this handshake situation that he feels so passionate about all of a sudden?
Yeah, first of all, I don't think you have to admit that you were wrong at all. Like, I fell for the Paul Maurice charm in the media for sure at the beginning. And then, like I said, it was really the Bruins series with the Panthers, and I got to travel and cover it up close, that I was like, I don't know. I'm changing my opinion. I'll make it quick. But again, the way he was talking about the Bruins was as if he was talking about like an AHL team that like deserved a round of applause for. And that was just my interpretation of his energy and attitude about it. But that's when I was kind of like, all right, I'm over these like goofy quotes and so on and so forth. And then I think on the last show, I said I'm starting to think that, in fact, he might be super brilliant and be doing this to distract the media from the players. Like he gets, the players maybe can then focus on answering the questions that they need to answer, but the media might be like going to Paul because he gives them such good, juicy, controversial, quotable things. And that actually might be a brilliant tactic that he's using. But one of the recent ones, again, stirring stuff up by asking Rod Brindamore to not join the handshake line with the players. I know this is kind of old news by now, but it's still kind of relevant to us. Thought it was really bizarre. I don't think think I'm the only one. I was kind of reading comments on Twitter and YouTube to see what people thought. Those who are fans of him think like he did the right thing. It just, this isn't breaking news coming from me. It came out of nowhere.
Right.
And it felt really weird. Like, it just, like, why? Why now? Why all of a sudden? And why be the guy? Like, have that conversation. There, you have each other's, before. Like, to take that attention away on camera, did you just decide it? Okay, here we go. There's also video and photos that have been surfacing of him shaking hands with players in the handshake line with the Lightning, as we can see over here. So, really weird that it came out of nowhere. I don't know what happened. My theory, and no one's really talking about the Sam Bennett, I guess, elbow to Frederik Andersen.
Another attempt at madness, yeah.
Yeah, I think people are going to think I'm exaggerating. I did watch it a couple times, and someone said to a comment that was made about it that, like, we're just trying to make something out of nothing. I don't think so, and I'm not saying it was crazy egregious, but no one's really talking about it, and I think it's because the Paul Maurice stuff overshadowed it. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I am now on board with the fact that I think he's a bit of a strategic genius, because my biggest takeaway from it is, like, it's one thing if he started doing this last year. Like, you just went to a Stanley Cup final a year ago. We never saw anything about this passionate coaches not being in the handshake line. But then round one, you were on the ice shaking hands. John Cooper also on the ice shaking hands. So what changed between round one and round two is my biggest question. And then it was just like, my parents always say that Douth protests too much. If me and my sisters and my brother came in running our mouths, they knew we were hiding something.
Right.
And that was the next thing. His explanation of this, like, gladiator experience and just supporting the passion of the players. We support the passion of the players, but you can also shake their hand and say, like, hey, great job moving along. And Rod Brind'Amour just looked so confused too.
Yeah.
That was the other thing that really tossed me. Like, if this is something that really ties back to something meaningful, I don't think Brind'Amour would have been as confused. So I'm right there with you. I just, again, I'm seeing him a little differently now, Sophia.
And really quick, we have like 20 seconds. I think if you're the losing coach and you say that, fine. But as the winning coach, it's just like an extra burn of being like, and by the way, please don't join the line. Didn't like it. I think we're on the same page with that. I think we have 10 seconds to say goodbye. I think we're going to talk this out on Wednesday, and, we can expand a little more. Guys, thanks for joining us on the Hockey Hub. We'll see you Wednesday at 10 a.m.
See ya.